So this is a very interesting week of Big Brother. There's many grievances that I have with it that I'll get into, but easily the biggest one of them all, and I think everybody can collectively agree with this, is how fucking impossible it is going to be to get the janky song out of my head for the rest of the season.
Everybody. Jankie, Jankie, you love me. Jankie.
Hey guys, it's Kevin here to review this week of Big Brother 26, episodes 28 through 30, and look, I'll just get the outline of the room. This is a weird week. This is a very different week of Big Brother than we have come to know, especially for this season. In a season where it has been so exciting, so unpredictable, there's been so much happening every single week. This is not really the most ideal. It felt like this was one of those seasons where everything was just kind of working. We've had great twists. We've had such a fun cast. We've had blindsides left and right. We've had some terrible gameplay, but that's made for really exciting outcomes, mostly terrible gameplay. There's been some good stuff. Chelsea's a really good player and things like that. I think some other people are starting to emerge into really decent, to really good players. But overall, it's been a very fun season. And right when it seems like everything's going right, here comes Big Brother with a twist to kind of upend the entire week. So yeah, look, I know I've said it in past videos, but I firmly do believe this is not going to be a terribly long video because there just isn't nearly as much to talk about. And I'll get into that, of course, but yeah, this week overall, definitely not my favorite. I wouldn't say it's terrible. It's still Big Brother 26, and there's still interesting stuff going on, especially, again, with just how fluid this entire game has been. There's still some interesting things happening, but it doesn't change the fact that this definitely isn't nearly as exciting as some of the other weeks we have talked about. There's not nearly as many events to discuss here. There's not even as much game talk happening this week. So as a whole, yeah, it's just not nearly as exciting. I would not at all say this is like Zombie Week levels of bad, but in the same way that Zombie Week kind of hurt the pacing of last season, this is very similar in the sense where it just kind of neuters all the momentum, all the excitement. It's just not really there, at least for the majority of this week. Things do pick up later on, but for the majority, it's just really not that exciting. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and just jump right into it. So, of course, we start off with Sunday's episode, and look, I'll say right off the bat, I think the weirdest thing about this week overall is that I honestly have much more to talk about when it comes to the episodes than I do on the feeds, and that just tells you the kind of week that we're dealing with here. Everything that's going on, which is kind of nothing. The episodes just give you a little bit more to discuss, especially considering, and I'll get into this in the what we didn't see, everything we get for the first 5 to 6 minutes of this episode, we didn't see on the feeds. Once, the episode ended on Thursday, the feeds did not come back until way later. So all the stuff we see prior to the twist reveal was not in this episode. So I guess we'll just talk about it. First thing to discuss is Leah, who really is just kind of the big character of this entire week. Of course, we'll talk about why, but she is very distraught after Quinn is gone. She doesn't really trust anybody at this point, and she's really frustrated, and she's feeling just really unstable with her relationships within the game, and you can understand that. You can totally get why she is feeling this way. Leah is now in a position where she basically only has Angela. And remember, this is now coming off a week where Angela pretty much threw her under the bus. Even if it was unintentional, she still did that. So she's even on shaky ground with her. You have Cam and MJ who are going to her, trying to do what they can to reassure her that they wanted to keep Quinn, but it just didn't really end up working out. Angela's also reassuring her that she did keep Quinn, and you know, she's not happy that once again the vote did not go the way that she was hoping. So Leah just really wants to make sure that no one is taking her stability within this game. And again, I really do feel for Leah here. She's been in this position that happens a lot where, you have people on your side and then they're just voted out back to back. And it really is like the worst case scenario. It really did seem like Leah was probably like the prime person to go out this week. But then the only other thing to really discuss before we get into everything is Angela, who is doing her classic stuff. Basically, there's this conversation with MJ where she goes to Cam and Chelsie about how she really didn't like the way that Angela was talking about the vote, how she made it very clear that she wasn't happy with how people voted. And of course, Angela, being her classic self, ends up listening in to this entire conversation and, basically we get this moment where she listens, she hears what they're saying, and she makes it clear to everybody that she wanted Quinn to go, but she thought that everyone was going to keep him, thus why she ended up doing it. And Chelsie just isn't believing her at this point, because Angela says this almost every single week when she has been on the wrong side of things, and she feels that she's really just trying to plead her case, but feels that she's not the one to do that with. It needs to be to Rubina and Kimo and T-Core, because they are the ones who she just ended up, betraying. And I agree with Chelsie here. It's like, I think the thing with Angela is that she's this extremely reactionary player to where she wants to make sure that, like, when she does something wrong, that she has somebody to like vent to about it or let them know, why she decided to go that way. But it doesn't necessarily matter if she's talking to the right person or not. She just wants to make sure that she's talking to somebody. And I like the fact that Chelsie is kind of able to like fully recognize Angela's game in that way. So Rubina, Kimo, and T-Core, they're talking about the votes and how everything went. And Angela goes to them and really just, again, classic Angela here, makes things so much worse on herself than they already were. She talks to them about how, she thinks that they're like this dangerous trio and that she knows that they're going to come after her and that if they were to win HOH, they're probably going to put her on the block. And you can just see how annoyed they already are at her. And even if they were already upset, they're so much more upset after this moment. She says that, she wants them here, but game-wise that it's hard. Kimo's telling her that she's good, but secretly he really wants her out of this game. T-Core is especially getting annoyed with her, feels like she's just hard to trust with how she lied to her and everything like that. And again, just really not looking great for Angela at this point. And I really do think this is always going to be Angela's biggest issue, is that, again, she just can't keep anything to herself. But at the same time, like I said, when you have a cast that most of the time is able to keep things to themselves, having someone like Angela who's so outspoken in that way, you can see how dangerous it really is becoming. And while I don't think any of what she's doing is necessarily intentional, I do think that it is definitely something to take note of and definitely something to maybe watch out for within the coming weeks. But definitely, again, not a great start for Leah or Angela here. But then we get the big reveal of what the twist for this week is going to be, and I was convinced at this point that there really wasn't going to be anything. When we had that announcement last week, I even said in the video, it's probably just Zingbot. It made the most sense to me. It's AI themed. Zingbot's a robot. Zingbot, is what we think of when we typically think of that kind of thing within Big Brother. I just figured, we're now down to 8 players. That's usually when Zingbot comes in. It just made the most sense. But in classic BBUS fashion, right when it seems like this is going to be one of those seasons where they realize the cast is so good that they don't even need a twist, look back to Big Brother 17. I said that many times throughout the video. I don't recommend you watch those reviews because they're not very good, but it was something that I was very adamant about. And just like any other season, we do have a twist here. And to be fair, I will say, the way they portray it on the episodes is a lot more entertaining than what it really was on the feeds, because basically, the house guests end up becoming acquainted with their new AI companion known as Janky. Janky is Ainsley's junior assistant, and essentially is like this very, like, has this very, like, toddler type presence, very much seems like he's like a part of a kid show, and he talks to them about this carnival that has pizza and ice cream and games, and the house guests are really excited for this. And honestly, like, I really will say, I like the way they ended up doing this. This part of the episode I did actually think was a lot of fun, because basically Janky makes them think that this is going to be just like one of those times where they're going to a carnival to take their mind off the game. We've seen other seasons do this, and that's what the house guests think is going to happen here. They go to this carnival expecting that this is just going to be like a fun thing for them to do. There's going to be all these games, there's going to be live music. And then Janky drops the ball on them that they're not just going to be staying within this carnival. They're going to be staying in this carnival all week and will be living here for the rest of the week. And yeah, so we have Janky Week, where everyone is now going to be living outside. And look, there's a lot of things we have to talk about here. One, just the idea of them doing this again after what happened with Direfest and Big Brother 24, how a lot of people just didn't really like it, felt that it was very unsafe the way they put things together, felt like they didn't even really know what to do. They were having them sleeping on like tarps, they didn't really feed them properly, there were ants everywhere. It just didn't seem like they were at all prepared for what to do. So just the inherent idea of them doing this again after what happened with Direfest, after the fact that, and I've said, like, the split house twist was not a bad idea, just an execution that was not the way for them to go about it. I think it should have always been like two different parts of the house and have them play the game that way, not have one group inside and one group outside. And the fact that what they took away from that was, okay, let's just have them outside again, that already is a stupid idea. But the even dumber idea is, at least when they did it in Direfest, it was 5 people, not 8 people, and it was a lot less crammed. And so, as a result, because there's only 8 people, because there is still 8 people in the house, there isn't a lot of strategy going on this week. A lot of the time, you know, the house guests, they do end up having strategical conversations, but they're very brief. They're not nearly as exciting as they really should be. They're constantly interrupted by plane noises or traffic. I mean, when people say that the game is played in a parking lot, this is the week that reminds you of that, because constantly there are planes going by, there is, you know, car alarms, there is all these different like traffic noises. I mean, it's like constant, and it's like blaring throughout these conversations. And also the fact that there isn't really a lot of space for them to have these conversations. If they want to strategize, they go onto a balcony, they go onto you know, they can go either onto a balcony or they can go into a small booth. Eventually, they end up deciding to go near one of these booths and have conversations there. So a lot of the strategy this week, it just nearly isn't as in-depth as it usually is. And in a week that I think could have been so exciting, it just feels like this was the worst possible week for them to do this. And especially in a season like this, I just really don't think this was the time to do this. I really think that this was one of those things where, like, they had a checklist of things they wanted to do for the season. This was easily one of the things I think they honestly could have just canceled out entirely. We were doing so well with the AI arena and just how great of a twist that was. Janky Week is the example of the kind of twist that we can't stand in Big Brother, because it just, again, completely robs us of so much potential of this week and how exciting it really could have been. So yeah, that obviously is, like, I think easily the biggest issue with this week for me. But then there's, some of their living conditions, which are not really what you would expect. Basically, they are all sleeping on cots. So at least they have that. They're sleeping on cots, but they're all basically together. They also are only allowed to consume pizza and ice cream the entire week, which is such a weird choice. But that being said, it's not that strange when you take into account that, like, Survivor does something very similar. But at least in Survivor, they're on an island and they can kind of like go off and strategize if they want to, whereas here they're all kind of crammed in a backyard and they aren't really able to do all that much. They can't break off into smaller groups in any way, so that's really a big issue. Them eating pizza and ice cream constantly, also not the most ideal. It's all dairy. They're not able to eat anything healthy. These are not the kind of pizzas that are healthy. They're like DiGiorno's and things like that. So that's obviously a big issue. And there also are constant requests from Janky to either do these dance parties or eat a pizza or eat ice cream. And they aren't allowed to do this at their own leisure. This is something that Janky tells them to do. Like sometimes they'll be sleeping and Janky's like, make a pizza, make some ice cream. And it's like, oh my God, this is absolutely insane. And I think really the only entertainment from this week are these requests. Janky telling them to, sing his theme song or do a dance party. I think that stuff is fun to watch. And there's multiple montages throughout this week of them just being so annoyed at what he's doing. And the reason for that is, again, because there just isn't really as much going on. You can see how much this ends up hurting their morale throughout the week. Everyone by the end of this week is just completely losing their shits, and I really just can't blame them at all. So look, I'll give them this. I do think the design of everything was better than Direfest. It was way more thought out. I thought there was a lot of detail put into the carnival setting. I liked the way they put together the booths and things like that. They did try to be accommodating in that way. They give them a microwave. They give them like a pizza oven. They do give them a dishwasher. Like there definitely are things that they do. Again, it just isn't really that exciting to watch. And I think what really would improve it is if in addition to them living outside, they would have given them like either tents of their own to where they can kind of go off and sleep in there, or if they gave them like huts of sorts where like they can all go into these huts if they want to strategize or if they want to sleep, if they want to just like take a breather. I think that would have been a lot better to watch, because as is, it just really ends up throwing a wrench into such an exciting season, and it really just ends up messing with the excitement this season has really brought us. It really makes things a lot less interesting, and as a result, for at least a good majority of this week, we barely get anything to talk about because they're just so over everything that is happening, and I really don't blame them for that. So yeah, all around, I think it's just not a very well thought out twist. I think there are definitely ideas put into it that can work, but if you're gonna have them do all these crazy punishments, just have them do that and then go in the house. You could even have them like in the house and all they can eat is pizza and ice cream. You could easily do that. You don't have to have them all outside and living in Janky World for the entire week if you want to do this. It just didn't really feel like they thought about, well, what impact is this going to have on the season? How much is this going to hurt them game-wise? It just makes it just not nearly as fun to talk about. So yeah, my thoughts on the twist is that I don't think this is like the worst twist in Big Brother history. This is certainly not Zombie Week. There's at least a game going on. There's an HOH, there's nominations, there's vetoes, there's evictions, there's at least that going on. But it is one of those twists where it's like, we really just didn't need to do this. This really just doesn't end up having the effect on the season that they wanted it to. I don't really understand what they were trying to get out of this. It really just feels like something funny that they wanted to do for the episodes. But again, you still could have done that without having them all live outside. I don't really think that adds anything to this week, aside from like one thing that happens. That's the only time that feels like this twist is legitimately adding something. But aside from that, it just didn't really feel like this twist needed to be there. So yeah, I know that this is like a big part of this review, but like I said, there's really just not a lot to talk about here. So we do have to spend a considerable amount of time just on the logistics and the absurdity of Janky week and how it was all put together. So I do think, like I said, inherently it was definitely better when you compare it to Direfest, but that also wasn't a very high bar initially, so it's not really that much of improvement overall. It feels like, you know, they definitely did a better job at accommodating them. They did do a better job of making sure like things were safe and things like that, but overall as a week, I just really was not a big fan of how this was put together, and it kind of did ruin what I think could have been a far more exciting week than it ultimately was. They also are only able to take cold showers, and that's something that's really bothering them. And then also, even when it comes down to the diary rooms, the way that they are done this week, because the fact they're all in this same area, there were even points on the feeds where they were saying like, oh, I heard Rubina screaming, I heard Chelsie screaming. So it's just, I don't think this twist is conducive to 8 house guests all in the same backyard. I just don't think you can do it this way. If you're gonna do it this way, like I said, there has to be a way to be able for them to break off into smaller groups, and then you can still do this same twist, because just the way it was designed, it just didn't really seem that well put together. I think there was so much more they could have done with this, and you know, you really just see the big issues here. There's just a lot of things that, even though, yes, I do think it was more well thought out, there's still quite a few things where I just question, like, why did you decide to do this? Because it really does end up impeding a good majority of just how fun and exciting this week really could have been. But then, of course, we do get to the HOH, and this is where things are a little bit fun because of the fact that it is Janky week. Janky is going to have them put together the comp themselves, and it ends up being an endurance comp that lasts a lot longer than we expected to. Basically, it involves this giant marshmallow on a stick, and they have to try to stay on this platform for as long as possible while keeping the marshmallow in place. So it's very similar to the pressure cooker in that way. And look, I understand that they were outside. They didn't want to reveal on the feeds that there was this theme going on. They couldn't really find a way to implement it. But the fact that they didn't let us get to see this entire thing, and we had to wait until the episode, especially with the outcome, it just, again, really underscores how bad of an idea this twist really was, how I think they really could have just done this at the end of the episode, like even end the episode last week with them maybe going outside and kind of introducing the twist then, because the way it was all put together, again, I just thought it was a little bit, for lack of a better term, janky. The way they put it together, I wasn't really a big fan of it at all, but we do get down to this HOH, and again, this alone is a big reason why this week is so disappointing, because it is this very exciting endurance comp where the trio is basically the first to fall here, while Kimo and T-Core are, and it very quickly comes down to Rubina, Angela, Cam, and Leah, and there's some really great highlights here. We do see that Angela in this moment is, again, just classic Angela. She is publicly telling all of them that she wants to make a deal, but only if her and Cam drop, then, you know, Rubina and Leah will give them both safety, and Rubina does not end up taking this deal. They don't show it in the episode, but apparently she did not take this deal. So that ends up happening, and it eventually does, and, you know, Rubina ends up then getting fourth when T-Core basically distracts her, and she ends up falling. But it does quickly come down to Angela, Cam, and Leah, where they do all agree to keep each other safe and hold up their end of the bargain. Angela eventually decides that she doesn't want to go anymore, just because, like, Cam and Leah haven't been HOH yet. She's been HOH twice, so she lets the both of them participate, and it then ends up being this very exciting battle between Cam and Leah, culminating in them going on one foot. And again, just the fact we didn't get to see this on feeds, the potential of it all, of getting to see this entire thing play out, which ends up being an almost 10-hour comp, mind you, it's just so incredibly frustrating. But it ends up going on between Cam and Leah. They end up going on one foot, and very quickly after this, Cam ends up And, we get this quick confessional where Chelsie is not exactly happy about this, feeling like Cam is really doing a detriment to him becoming HOH and really was hoping that he would be HOH to keep her safe. But ultimately, Cam does end up falling quite quickly, and Leah is the new HOH. And I was freaking out when I heard about this because I think this is what all of us was really hoping to see. Seeing her come off of this deficit with Joseph and Quinn going and having almost nobody left in the house except Angela. This is the kind of Big Brother that we just really always enjoy. I think everyone always hopes every season that the underdog ends up unexpectedly winning, but usually the comp is not equitable enough for them to do so. It just ends up going to the people that are constantly in power, making it such an easy run for those people to just take out everybody else. And I think that's kind of what we were expecting. But again, it speaks to how good this season is that we're able to get a moment like this where we do get to see Leah win HOH. We do get to see her now in power. And it ends up happening in such an exciting way in this long comp that she was just so focused on. I mean, this was just so much fun to watch. I was really hoping that Leah would win HOH. I've been a big fan of her now for the past couple weeks, and I was just really excited to see what she was going to do. But again, the thing that sucks is that it's happening during Janky Week, a week where they're not really able to strategize in the way they normally can, and that is what makes this that much more frustrating. The fact that this wasn't just like a normal HOH, like say Cam or MJ winning, where things would have been a lot more straightforward. There were just so many possibilities, and the fact that we didn't really get to see those moments of Leah just being in her HOH and celebrating with Angela and, laughing in the face of everybody else and excited to go in this direction and really like contemplate what she's going to do, have these more extended one-on-ones. These are not things we get to see because again, everybody's basically in the same area and not able to strategize in the way they normally can. But still, it was very exciting to see the potential of Leah HOH. I was just so excited about and was just really, really eager to see how this was all going to end up going. So of course, as usual, I'm going to start off here talking about Leah's HOH and what she really does plan to do. And look, just the potential of Leah winning, I don't think you quite understand how exciting this really was, especially because somehow in my last video, I left out the fact that Angela and Leah had this conversation like a couple days before the eviction, where basically Leah told Angela that she was at a point where she was just really upset with the structure of the house, and she was able to understand what was really going on. She saw the trio, but she also saw just how comfortable Chelsie was getting in the game. And so she was really looking at doing Chelsie and T-Core as nominations, putting them side by side against each other. And that's basically what everybody was expecting. I think everyone thought going into this week that that's what Leah was going to do. It was going to be this explosive moment, and I'll talk, and here is the thing with how she handles things. I get it that she's outside. I get it that because of the fact she doesn't have her HOH room, she isn't really able to like take time to herself and really strategize about what's going on and really have those quieter moments and really thinking about what she wants to do. I get that. But the way she handles things this week, I was honestly just really disappointed with how everything ended up going, because it just wasn't nearly as exciting or that explosive, like, big HOH that I think everybody was hoping for. But basically, she does talk about how excited she is to have won. She knows how badly she needed this, and Cam is feeling pretty good. He knows that they made this deal. He feels like Leah's going to hold up her end of the bargain. Kimo, on the other hand, is really unsure how to feel about this because he doesn't really know where him and Leah stands. And then Chelsie is terrified here. Chelsie feels like she absolutely will be targeted. I think, again, all of us also expected her to be. We'll get into what ends up happening there. But basically, she really wants to take this week to try to separate some groupings of sorts, and she eventually does have one-on-ones with everybody. But again, because of this being Janky Week, there's not really a lot to talk about within these one-on-ones, and they don't even really show the extent of most of these conversations. She talks to MJ a little bit about like where she really needs to go with her nominations. MJ brings up the idea of just going for the trio and putting up the two that ended up dropping first. When MJ's unsure where her and Leah stood, but it seems like she's going to have her back this week, which, okay, I mean, I'm fine with Leah sticking with MJ because the two of them kind of had, silently protecting each other throughout this game, despite the fact they haven't always been on the same side. They have in some ways, like, made sure that the other was okay. MJ, I do think, is a big reason why Leah was not put on the block last week. I think if MJ did not have the veto, Leah probably does go on the block. So, okay, I'm fine with her not putting MJ up. Not putting Cam up also is fine. She kind of reassures him that he's going to be fine, asks for his expertise. He talks about, again, how he wants her to go after the trio, and that's kind of how things are going to go. She talks to Chelsie as well, just about where she stands, and Chelsea's pretty sure that Leah is going to put her up at this point and how things are going to be, but Leah brings up the trio and how, it's the best move for her week. And this is what I will say about this, is at this point, when we had these one-on-ones, I really did believe at this point that Leah was just playing everybody, that Leah was not going to be honest with her nominations. This was going to be, and I'm not trying to say that Leah is anywhere near this person because I fucking hate this person. I did not like them on their season, but Cam's HOH last season, where he put up Izzy and Felicia and lied to everybody that it was going to be Jag and Blue, told everybody except Jag and Blue. That's essentially what I thought that Leah was doing here, that she was basically trying to fool Cam, MJ, and Chelsie, make them feel comfortable, make them think that this is the direction she was going to go. She was telling them it was going to be Rubina and Kimo. She was going to, listen to their suggestions and, tell them that that's the direction that she was going to go. Meanwhile, going to Rubina and Kimo, and she even says to Rubina, like, I have a larger plan in place. You're not the target this week. So I really did think that she was trying to trick everybody into thinking that this is what she was going to do. But then we get to her one-on-one with Angela, where I thought for sure, like, okay, this is going to be the conversation where she probably tells her what's going on, but also maybe not, because her and Angela, again, don't really know where they stand. Angela did just kind of rat her out, so I do think she is going to try to be careful about that, and, she talks with Angela. They both discuss that the trio needs to be broken up, and that it should be T-Core and Rubina, but again, I still was trying to stay hopeful that, again, this is just Leah playing everybody. But then we get to the nomination ceremony, and here's what I'll say about this. I like the way this nomination ceremony was designed. I think that the way they put everything together here, them having these different bottles, I don't know why they didn't just have her smash the bottles. That would have been so much more exciting. Instead, she has 2 rings, and she puts each ring on the house guest she wants to nominate. But we get to it, and she ultimately does decide to put up Kimo and Rubina, and those are her nominations for the week, and I just don't know what happened here. I really don't know why she decided to go in this direction. Like, this is a week where everybody is outside. There's not a lot of time for people to strategize. You're not able to have as many conversations. Why not just take this one opportunity you have as the HOH to make a real power move in this game, to do something explosive? Why not try to really show yourself as this power player while also just throwing the house into full-on chaos? You're all outside anyway, so just kind of watch, and you can just, do what you can to put up these nominations, watch the fireworks emerge, and just kind of sit back and watch everything play out. And meanwhile, they're coming to you, making sure that, like, you're good. These nominations were just so not even suboptimal, were honestly like the worst possible nom set I think that she really could have gone for, because not only are these the nominations that I think Leah did not need to make at all, but this is basically just doing Chelsie, MJ, and Cam's bidding. I give full credit to them this week because of the fact that like she didn't even think about going in that direction. She knew that it was the right thing to do. She was going to put Chelsie on the block, but I guess that because of just how comfortable Chelsie did make her feel, they did admittedly have this like very long conversation in like the bathroom before the eviction last week where it seemed like things were better with them. I guess that somehow got her to back off of it. I just don't really know what happened here. Like, I really was thinking Leah was gonna do something crazy, and then it just ends up being so uneventful by the end of this. So yeah, just really not happy with how these nominations turned out. But I still was hopeful that maybe, so really just not happy at all with how these nominations turned out, especially when, like I said 2 weeks ago, this was the trio I think Leah needed to stick with. I think this is the trio that she needed to make sure that like she had on her side, and it just seemed like she was just completely just losing sight of what she needed to do here. It's like she won the power, knew the move that she was supposed to make, and then just couldn't go through with it, and it was just so disappointing to watch play out. So immediately, especially on a week that had so much potential, I was already feeling very let down here. So we do now have to talk about the things that we didn't see, and I'll just tell you right now, there's kind of nothing. Like, when I say that the strategy is just so muted and simplified this week, I really do mean it, because there just isn't really all that much to talk about. In fact, let me just check right now. Do I have anything in the what we didn't see? I'm trying to remember if there's anything here. Okay, yeah, there is one thing I do have that I do really need to talk about, and it's the trio. Again, I know I went on a rant last week, but I gotta go on another one again here, because the way all of them decide to play this week is egregiously bad. Like, already I was feeling like Kimo and Rubina are not playing very well this week. T-Core at least is trying to like encourage them to do things, and they're just not really doing them, and she would be so much better off if they weren't in the game, and, you know, she's the real power player here. She's kind of carrying them. But even T-Core this week really just ends up completely dropping the ball in terms of the game. And I will say, for T-Core's sake, I do think a large majority of this is because of the twist. She was easily one of the people that was suffering the most. The first day, I mean, she nearly collapsed just because of the heat, and you can see the impact this is having on her. And I definitely do understand that. But there's so many moments throughout this week where it feels like the trio could be doing something to help themselves, and they just don't. And there's countless examples I can give, but the one example I will give, at least for this portion of the video, I have other ones later, is for Kimo, who is told by T-Core repeatedly throughout the day, go talk to Leah, go have a one-on-one with Leah, go strike up a conversation with her. And he's going to do it. Like, he's ready to talk to her. He's ready to, you know, make sure that, like, he's good on the block. He knows he's been targeted now 2 times in a row. He does not want to be nominated again. Falls asleep before he can even talk to her. Yeah, I don't even know what to say anymore. I'm so disappointed. I'm like legitimately so disappointed, because I really like the trio. I like them as people. I enjoy the moments that they spend together. I mean, there's many moments throughout this week of just the 3 of them interacting that are honestly really fun to watch. But as game players, they have just completely lost sight of pretty much everything that's going on around them, and it's just so disappointing to see. There's so many moments this week that I just was really rooting for things to turn around, and I do very much blame them for a lot of the outcome of the week overall, because of just the way they end up playing the game. I don't put all the blame on them. A lot of it does go to Leah, obviously, but I think that if they had been just a little bit more active this week, you didn't even need to be super active. Nobody this week, in fact, is super active, but you needed to at least like put in that effort when you needed to, and they just didn't really do that. And I was just really unfortunate to watch because these are three people that I really just thought could be in such a better spot in the game, but because of the fact that they have just completely just kind of checked out of everything, they're just not able to kind of like refocus in, and it really ends up hurting their games quite severely this week. So now let's go ahead and talk about Wednesday's episode. And look, Sunday at least gave us some good stuff to talk about. Wednesday, there's really not much. There's really not much of anything to talk about in this episode. It's a lot of filler, a lot of Janky torturing them, moments where Janky is like changing, adding more lyrics to the song, everyone getting more increasingly frustrated. There's like a filler segment about like MJ's dad and how she misses him. There's a moment about Leah talking about chubby chasing. I mean, there just isn't really much of anything going on. And this is not one of those instances where they have a lot to work with and they aren't showing it. No, they legitimately just don't have much to work with at this point. They really don't. But even at that, the stuff that they do decide to show, like those strategic conversations, I don't even think they really explained properly. And so it's probably one of the least eventful episodes of this entire season, but there is a little bit of stuff to talk about here. Leah does kind of discuss how she feels good about her nominations. You know, she knows she's going to break this trio up and she's feeling great about it. And yeah, I don't even know. I don't even know what to say here because I'm just so let down by the fact that she thought that this was like the direction to go in when this is exactly the wrong trio that she needs to be targeting after, again, she was blindsided by the other trio. Cam and MJ lied to her about the directions they were going in. Chelsie told Leah she was going to put her on the block. It's just like, what are you doing? Like, I could honestly go do a whole video just ranting about how frustrating her decisions were this week because I really was just rooting for Leah to turn things around, and right here it just showed me that that's not what was going to end up happening. There is a moment where Rubina and Kimo, they're both really annoyed that Leah put them on the block. I would be too, considering at how things went. But Kimo also is annoyed himself for not having that one-on-one with Leah. I'm glad they brought that up in the episode because that definitely is something that he should have done. And like I said, there's really not much to talk about in this episode on a substance level. And the fact that one of the most interesting things to talk about is literally just this conversation where Angela goes to Rubina and T-Core about how bad she feels, how she's burned Kimo the other 2 weeks, and she's really hoping that one of them come off the block, and that's then followed by T-Core just going into this rant about how much she can't stand Angela and how forced her voice is and how she's really just getting tired of her. Again, it really just shows how little is going on this week, and honestly, like, this is a major part of this week. There is a considerable amount of time that T-Core spends just ranting about Angela and how much she can't stand her and how much she feels of, you know, her actions are performative and how she feels like she, you know, is somebody that just, she can't trust at all and she doesn't want in the game anymore and she won't vote for her on jury. And look, I get it that, you know, T-Core has not had a good relationship with Angela. She, you know, that she doesn't really feel like the two of them have ever been in a good place. But also, I don't really blame her at all for this. Like, I saw a lot of people throughout this week on Twitter saying that, like, oh, T-Core sucks for saying this about Angela, and T-Core wishes that she was as entertaining as Angela, and Angela, you know, isn't all these things. And it's like, first of all, you know, perception's always going to be reality. The way that you are looking at somebody within the house, it's going to continue to be that way. And, you know, I think that T-Core is absolutely valid in feeling the way she does about Angela, and anyone who says otherwise, I think just is really just lacking a lot of empathy, which, you know, isn't surprising considering how a lot of the fan base in Big Brother is. But I really do think it's one of those instances where, like, you kind of need to take a step back and recognize that There's nothing wrong with T-Core feeling this way. What I have an issue with is just the superiority complex that like T-Core and Rubina have gotten, where they try to talk about how great of people they are and things like that, but they don't really end up showing that within this episode. What I take issue with more so is, again, just how they're doing this throughout the entire week rather than trying to campaign to Leah, trying to turn things around, trying to rat out Chelsie, MJ, and Cam, who they have so much information on that they could then drop on Leah at any point and instead just decide not to. That's really the frustration I have here, is that this is so much of what we end up getting this week from them, when this is such a crucial week for the trio to try to do whatever they can to save their asses, and they just really don't end up doing it. And so that's really how I feel. Like I said, T-Core is valid for feeling how she does, but it doesn't change the fact that I just really wish that we saw a lot less of this and more of the trio trying to do what they can to, just try to turn their games around, and they just really aren't doing that here. So we then do get to the veto picks, and if you wanted to talk about like the most exciting veto draw possible, I don't think you could have had a better outcome than what you do here, because we do end up getting Angela, Chelsie, and T-Core for the first time all season, by the way. I didn't realize that T-Core never played in a veto until now, but she is chosen for this week. She's not going to be the Suri of the season who's never chosen, and still has never been chosen, of course. But they are drawn for the veto. Chelsie really wants to make sure that T-Core does not win this, because she knows that if T-Core does, that she likely is going to go on the block, and she wants to make sure that that doesn't happen. T-Core is very concerned that Leah is targeting the trio this week, and she really hopes that she can win this veto and really wants to make sure that ends up happening. And yeah, I mean, just the potential of this particular veto win was so exciting to see. Like, I was really hoping that like we'd get a big, like we get a real shock here, and like Kimo or Rubina would end up winning this and they save themselves, and then Leah ends up going for the jugular and putting up Chelsie. Like, I was really hoping that's what would end up happening, but we'll get to the veto and how things end up going. But in terms of like, again, exciting veto picks, I really don't think you could have had a better outcome than you did here. But we do get to the veto competition, and again, I gotta talk about how much I love the equitable comps of this season. Everybody was kind of talking about like what comps could they really do in the backyard. In 24 we had the like stacking styrofoam comp that we ended up doing, and that was the base, that was the big POV comp. But here it's a lot more like, again, well thought out, which I will give credit to them for. They definitely did try to make sure that these comps were workable for the setting that they were in, but also make sure that the comps still remain equitable. It's yet another puzzle of sorts where basically they all have a bunch of candies. They have to try to stack them into the right place, and whoever's able to do that does end up winning the HOH. But there's a little bit of a wrinkle in this comp. It's not just like any other veto, because unlike most vetoes, there's not one winner. There actually is two winners, and whoever ends up winning the second veto ends up now getting the janky veto, which is like a regular veto, but basically won't be activated until they also win another comp, and then they can kind of do whatever they want. And this is a twist that I actually really like. I'm always a fan of double vetoes. I think there's a lot of exciting outcomes you could do with that. Most of the time, it doesn't really end up amounting to much, but this is one of those instances where it's like a double veto actually could be really good. This could get Leah to maybe recognize like what she was doing wrong, and maybe get her to completely change her nominations around, and maybe get her to basically arrive at the right decision. Maybe this is what's going to get her to recognize that. And it seemed like maybe that's what was going to happen, because we do get to the veto winner, and it ends up being Angela who wins the veto, which is just absolutely incredible. The fact that she now has 3 comp wins under her belts is amazing to me. I would have never expected to sit here and say that Angela is one of the comp beasts of the season. I think that's just absolutely insane. But again, it really just speaks to the fairness of these comps. The fact that anybody can really win, it makes for really exciting and admittedly very unpredictable and unprecedented outcomes like this, but you really do kind of have to start looking at Angela, like I said last week, and thinking, you know what, maybe she actually does have a sense of win equity. Maybe there is a chance that she can somehow end up making it to the end. Maybe she can start to be a bit more respected. This is the kind of thing that can really do that, and it was really exciting to see that she ended up winning this. I also loved just getting to see Angela's reaction here, just how overjoyed she was over winning, how she was like freaking out, and everyone else was just as shocked. I mean, again, this is like what we hope to see in competitions like this, where like the most exciting and just unpredictable outcome ends up happening. There was a tweet going around that was like, this is the season where like that one thing that could happen that could just completely change the course of the game ends up happening every single week. And it's like, yeah, that actually is true. Like every single week, the way things have gone is not at all the way I expected them to go. And this is the perfect example of that. So again, just really exciting to see Angela actually win this here. But then when it comes to the Janky Veto, Leah ends up winning the Janky Veto. So essentially her and Angela have almost all the power this week. And at this point, I was just really feeling good. I was like, you know what? This is exactly the outcome that we needed. Leah knows she made the wrong decision. Surely she's going to turn things around, right? That's what's going to happen. Yeah, we'll talk about it. But for right now, I was feeling pretty good about this. So we then get to some of the conversations here. Angela talks to Kimo and pretty much immediately tells him that she's going to use it on him. She has her mind made up. No one's going to change it for her. And I just love how like driven Angela is and how unmovable she is. Like she can't be swayed in any way. She wants to make sure that veto is used, and I think we knew the second that Angela won the veto that she was probably going to use it, and I expected her to most likely use it on Kimo. She's felt really bad over the last 2 evictions when she was voting him, thinking he was going home, and then he didn't, and so she wants to make it up to him here. He is unsure if she's being honest with him, but is hoping that is going to be the case. And unlike the last time where he decided to take a nap and not talk to Leah, this time around he actually does talk to Leah and has a fairly good conversation with her where he basically says that he thinks that he could be good with her. His side is not a threat. They could be protecting her. Chelsie, Cam, and MJ are far more threatening, and she really should be going in that direction. It didn't show this part in the video, but he even brings up the possibility of being in a Final 2 with her and feeling really good with her in the game. He's always really enjoyed the interactions they've had as friends, but in the game, he's never really known where to go, and it's like, oh my god, like Kimo actually is being really effective here. Kimo actually is doing some really good work. I really was thinking that this maybe could change everything. Maybe this is the conversation that Leah needed to hear. The fact that she didn't talk to Kimo last time and now she is talking to Kimo and hearing how adamant he is on wanting to work with her, maybe this can potentially turn things around. Maybe there's a possibility that she just wasn't thinking correctly and now maybe things will be a little bit different. And she goes into a conversation with Angela where her and Angela, they have all the power now. They can do literally whatever they want. If they wanted to change both nominations, despite the fact that Leah doesn't know if she's going to win the Janky Veto, because of the fact that she has been winning comps, I think she should be under the assumption that she is going to win, or at least have a plan if she's going to win. And she does have this conversation with Angela where they talk about how threatening the trio is and how she is thinking that if she takes down Kimo, she's going to put up T-Core, and obviously that's not great. Well, we'll talk about that in a bit, but she does tell Angela that if she wins the Janky Veto, she might just end up potentially putting up Chelsie here. It seems like maybe she is going to go in that direction. She even says in a confessional that she has not forgotten what Chelsie did, that she was going to put her on the block last week, that she was an option, which I really do think they should have shown this scene in the episode, because if you did not know that, this is information that's like coming out of nowhere. But yeah, Chelsie, like I said, she did tell Leah to her face that she was an option to be nominated, and that, she blinds, and that she put up Quinn and blindside him. Leah has not forgotten this at all, and so surely because she remembers, maybe there's a chance that Chelsie is going to go on the block. It generally seems like she is conflicted here. might not necessarily be the case, but maybe this is what's going to turn things around. I really was feeling confident at this point that maybe Leah's going to change her mind here. Maybe she's going to try to turn things around. But then we get to the veto ceremony, and look, again, I will give it to Big Brother here. I like the fact that because it was Janky Week, they tried to change some things up here. Having Leah and Angela come out of porta potties to tell everyone it was to announce that it was time for the veto meeting is the most Big Brother US thing I think that they have ever done. Like, there's just so many parts of the show that are, for lack of a better term, so unserious, and this is probably the best example of that. Like, I could not believe that they actually did this. And then the carnival music that they added to the regular veto music was honestly a really nice touch. So again, despite the fact that this is a really stupid week, I think that I like the fact that they are at least acknowledging that this is dumb, and I thought that this was a fun way to kind of change things up. I like seeing the change of scenery here. I thought this was kind of a fun little idea there, but we get to the veto, and Leah does start off doing her comp for the Janky veto, and it's fairly simple. Basically, she has to aim 3 balls at like 5 bottles. She has to knock them down as, you know, with at least 3 balls. She has to try to knock all 5 down. It seemed fairly easy, but she misses every single shot and doesn't end up winning the Janky veto, and so that's not going to happen. But maybe the veto will turn things around. Maybe Leah's changed her mind here. Maybe she's going to put up Chelsie. Angela does use the veto on Kimo, and then Leah puts up T-Core, and yeah, she has fully made a choice now that she is going after the trio that she honestly probably should have been working with. But anyway, that's kind of how things do play out here. There is admittedly a really good DR from Rubina at the end of this episode where she basically says that if T-Core is going to go, she wants to make sure that Leah follows her right outside the door. But that's really how we end off this episode. Okay, so now we're going to get into the what we didn't see, and here's what I will say. Even though I don't like this twist at all, things did actually start to pick up a bit after the veto. There is a little bit more strategic conversations, and as such, there is a bit more going on to really talk about. But also, like I said, I don't think this episode was edited all that well, especially when it comes to Leah and the Janky veto, because in reality, despite the fact the episode tries to make it seem like Leah was going to use the veto and put up Chelsie if she was to have won that Janky veto, in reality, Leah had almost no interest in actually using the Janky veto and was constantly telling people, I'm not going to use it. That's not what I want to do. And also had multiple conversations with Angela throughout that night saying that she was thinking of putting up Chelsie, but ultimately Angela kind of talked her out of it. Angela even said that, like, hey, if I win HOH next week, that I'm going to be the one to go after Chelsie. And this is the problem. Like, and I've said this so many times, I feel like, when it comes to Big Brother. It's like, if you are always saying that, oh, we can take out this person next week, most of the time they win HOH and then you end up going and you don't have that chance to do it. It's like, why not take the opportunity to do it when the iron is hot, when you know you need to do it? Why not just go ahead and do it? I don't understand why Leah didn't just decide to put up Chelsie here. She talks repeatedly throughout the week how she doesn't like that she put up T-Core. She wishes she didn't have to put up T-Core, when it's like, no, you don't have to put up T-Core. Kimo gave you a really good pitch. If you just said that you would be okay with them as a trio. And no, Rubina does not do as nearly as good of a job with her pitch. T-Core also not a great job with her pitch. Leah asks her a question about, what she would do, and she doesn't really give her a straight answer. But regardless, that putting up Chelsie is the correct move. I don't understand why she didn't just go ahead and do it. I thought that this was just so infuriating. I was so disappointed that this is the direction that she went in, but also that the episode even gives you the false hope that that's what she was going to do, when repeatedly that's not what she wanted to do. Now, here's the thing I will say to Leah. To her credit, I want to believe that she was going to put up Chelsie, but ultimately didn't, because everybody was talking her out of it. She talked to multiple house guests about how maybe this is what needed to happen, but that she didn't think that she had the votes, and ultimately decided not to. And for a long time, I was saying that, like, okay, I kind of understand that reasoning. I think it's fine that Leah didn't do that. It might even honestly be fine that she's targeting this trio because they're not winning anything, whereas the other trio is, and there's a lot more dysfunction going on, quite a bit of more dysfunction, even more so than we've seen potentially in the next episode, which I'll talk about. But in hindsight, like, I just don't think that this was the right move for her. I really just think that if you are so certain that there is somebody in this house that you know will target you next week, why not just take the opportunity to put them up? This was her shot to do this. This was the time for her and Angela to completely change the course of the week, and she didn't even try. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if she threw the janky veto because she didn't want to use it. So, yeah, it's just really disappointing. Like I said, I was trying to, defend Leah all week. I was trying to do what I can to, really just get inside her head and try to understand, what she was trying to do. Try to really look at her HOH in the best way possible, but there just isn't any other way to look at it, especially now that the week has ended. Then she really just completely fucked up here and not going in the direction that she should have. I don't understand why you put up T-Core and not Chelsie when T-Core at least might have had your back, and especially after the deal that Kimo made. Why not just do that instead of knowing you can't put up Cam? You say this throughout the week, you can't put up Cam, you know you're not going to put up MJ, why not just put up Chelsie? Because if Chelsie is against Rubina, there's no chance in hell that Chelsie stays. There just isn't. There's no question about Chelsie staying at that point. So I don't understand why she didn't just go ahead and do it. But, and also you're now giving the power to Chelsie to, mess with your nominations. But either way, that's kind of what ends up happening there. It's also important to note that T-Core was not intended to be the target at first. Leah wanted to target Rubina and thought that T-Core wouldn't end up leaving because nobody wanted to vote her out. So that's something else to think about. Even after she arrives at getting out T-Core, that's not what she wants to do at first. So again, just really confusing. I don't know if I can fully, I can put the blame somewhat on the lack of sleep and the really bad conditions that everybody's in. But again, I just feel like Leah knew what she needed to do here. I don't understand why she didn't just do it. Because think about it. If Leah makes this move and puts up Chelsie and T-Core, basically now both sides are having to campaign to Angela. They need Angela's vote at that point. She pretty much is the deciding vote of what ends up happening. You then have a situation where Leah can try to make a bond with one of the trios, assure them that, okay, this is my direction I'm going, and then now she's now gained more allies rather than pick a side and lose those allies completely and now let the others that she's now kept safe do whatever they want. So again, it really was a bad move, and again, I was trying to do what I could to see the good in it, but after a certain point, you just gotta look at it and say that, yeah, this just doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever, considering the direction that you wanted things to go in and that you knew was the right decision. Backing out of that decision, it's just, I can't possibly get behind it. So yeah, all around, I think this was just really bad for Leah. I really think she should have just taken the shot, but she didn't, and I think it's going to have an immediate impact on her as soon as next week. The only other thing to really talk about here is, again, I gotta give another example from the trio, because something the episode does not show you is that they had so much more time this week for the veto ceremony than they usually do. Most of the time on a Monday, they wake up and then a few hours later they do the veto ceremony. But because of the fact that the janky veto was a thing, I guess they needed to have better, they needed to wait until it was dark for lighting purposes for the episode. And so as a result, they waited until literally 8 o'clock at night, their time, to do the veto ceremony. And you would think that T-Core, knowing that there's a very good chance that she could hit the block, that she could be the renom here, that Angela's probably going to use this veto, that she would do her damnedest to make sure that she does not go on the block, fully exposing the things that Chelsie and MJ have said, and maybe tries to do what she can to turn the week around, realizing her one-on-one with Leah maybe wasn't as good as it was. Maybe she'll try to do that. And I was hoping that that's what would happen here. Like, we'd have this time. It's like, okay. And it honestly, like, some people were even saying, like, this felt like a deliberate attempt to try to get the trio to reason with Leah and talk her out of doing this and putting up Chelsie instead. But while they should have done that, instead, they spend basically the entire day planning Kimo's birthday and putting together this song for him that they eventually end up doing, which wasn't bad. Like, I enjoyed the song. I did. But they do this the entire day when, meanwhile, Leah and Angela are having a conversation right by the pool as you are doing this song. You could take any opportunity to try to talk to Leah, try to talk to Angela, try to have a conversation with them on the balcony and try to get them to change their minds. And you just don't. I just was so baffled by this decision. Like, again, you know what likely is going to happen. You know that Leah is trying to separate your trio. T-Core has had suspicions all week that this is what you're going to do. And instead, you're just trying to plan this song. And here's the thing, like, you can plan the song all you want, but not at the expense of you having a game conversation. Like, that is what really the kind of stuff that frustrates me here. Because on one hand, I'm watching them do this song on the feeds, and it's a lot of fun. But in the back of my head, I'm just thinking, like, you could literally be talking to Leah right now. You have all the time in the world, and you're just not doing it. And I was just so annoyed by how this ended up going, especially compared to Quinn last week, who talked to Chelsie until it was, until he didn't have time anymore. T-Core and Rubina electing to essentially just like spend the time just goofing off and trying to rehearse this song. Again, it was just really disappointing to see. So in a week where the trio is just really just like annoying me, this is probably the thing that bothered me the most the entire week. And even there's this conversation with Rubina and T-Core like early in the week where basically they have accepted the fact that Kimo is going. They are talking like Kimo is already out of the game, and it's just like, you have an opportunity to do something about that. If you don't want Kimo to leave, you can do something to try to turn that around, and it just seems like they didn't seem to want to do much about it. They just kind of elected to just kind of sit back and just kind of wait and see what happens. And again, this has been the problem. I talked about this a while ago. Because of the fact that they are so passive in terms of how they play, they constantly think about doing things, but they never actually do them. It has now gotten to a point where, because their life is on the line, they don't want to do anything about it. Because of the fact that they have had this mindset of, let's just wait and see, they are still doing that when they are in the most dangerous situation they have been this entire game. And again, it was just so frustrating to watch. I want to like the way they're playing, but it was so hard to root for them this week just because, again, they were doing so little to help themselves. There's also the fact that the trio this entire week, I think they've just become a little bit like developing this superiority complex of sorts. They talk about how like they're the good people and they want to play for people over profits, and they don't really want to, they don't really want to award people the game unless they're a good person. And it's so frustrating to watch, because most of the time when you are talking about being a good person within the house, it usually is due to like, oh, if you keep us safe, you are a good person, but if you're targeting us, you're not. It's just really frustrating to watch. And again, the fact they spend so much time just ranting about this rather than trying to do anything to save themselves, that's really what ended up just bugging me this week. And just, again, I want to like the trio. I've liked the trio all week. I did not enjoy watching the trio this week. I can confidently say that, and I hate to say it because I really did have enjoyed them up to this point, but this week they just really frustrated me because they could have done so much to try to save themselves, and they just really didn't, and it was just so maddening to watch. All right, so with all that said, let's just go ahead and talk about tonight's episode, which honestly, in a week that didn't really have a ton going on, I actually thought tonight's episode was thoroughly enjoyable and actually had quite a bit going on to really talk about. First thing to discuss is that Julie is back and COVID-free, which is fantastic. I love the way she introduced herself. She's just like, I'm back. Like, it's probably the most energy we've seen from Julie and the audience as well. I don't think we've seen this lively of an audience in a very long time, and so I thought that was kind of fun to watch, just to see her come back in that way. So the big thing to really talk about here is just everybody's reactions to this veto ceremony. You can see that T-Core is very disheartened to have to go up against Rubina, is wishing that both of them could stay, but knows that that's not the case. Leah also is like really upset about her nominations, really hoping that she didn't hurt her feelings. You have MJ, Cam, and Chelsie trying to calm her down. Chelsie, again, still is surprised that she didn't put her on the block, but also really wants T-Core to stay, wants to do whatever she can to make sure that T-Core is still around. But I gotta say, the real star of this episode, at least for me, the person who I think we've really got to give a lot of credit to is MJ, who after a week and honestly a season where I've just not been impressed by anything that she has been doing, but hoping that eventually she did turn things around, this is really the first week where I am legitimately impressed by the way she ended up playing. Now, the episode doesn't really get into all the interworkings of like what she's done really well, and I'll talk about that more in the what we didn't see. But what the episode does show is that MJ is the main person that wants to try to vote out T-Core. She feels like T-Core is the bigger threat. She wants to keep Rubina around and feels like she is the person that, you know, she just doesn't really have a good relation with. She put her on the block before. She just feels like she needs to go. So she does talk to Angela, and Angela's pretty much on the same page as we know. So she just really needs to get one more vote, and she's not really sure what direction to go in, because she's pretty sure that Chelsie is going to keep T-Core and Cam most likely will follow suit, but she wants to try to talk to him and is hoping that maybe there's a chance that this could maybe end up working out, that she could potentially get Cam on her side, but also is worried that anything she says to Cam is just going to get back to him, is just going to get back to Chelsie, so she's really unsure how to go about this. So that really only leaves her with Kimo, who she really knows it's going to be tough for him to make that decision, but she's hoping that she can steer him in that way. Rubina does go to Kimo. They have this conversation, and he essentially tells her that she's going to be evicted, and that's kind of how things are going to go, and really just kind of makes it clear that, like, that's the direction that he's going. So you can see that Rubina is really uncertain as to how things are going to go for her. However, the real meat and potatoes of this episode comes in this scene between Cam, MJ, and Chelsie. Now, if you remember 2 weeks ago, Cam and MJ, they've been getting very close. They've been cuddling a lot, and Chelsie is really getting bothered by it. They were told that it was starting to bother her by Leah. Leah kind of let MJ in on the fact that this was something that maybe she should let off on doing, but clearly they have not resisted. They don't really understand that this is something that bothers Chelsie. Leah just kind of made it seem like this is not good for her game, and you can see that this is something that they're continuing to do, and Chelsie is really starting to get annoyed by this, so she decides to sit away to put her cot away from Cam. Cam notices this, kind of calls her out as to why she's doing this, doesn't really understand why she has to move away. And there's a moment where, like, Leah also recognizes this and gives a really funny DR where she talks about what's going on and how Cam and MJ are getting really close and how she's now affectionately calling them Makensy. Again, I don't know if this is going to go anywhere. Like, legitimately, I don't know if they're actually going to become a thing. But I really do think they're going to probably back off of it, at least in the house, after what happens here, because this kind of escalates into this full-on argument between Cam and Chelsie, and her talking about how upset she is about this, and, you know, how she doesn't like the way that he's constantly moving towards women, and they're really getting into it. And this is the fun part of this week. Like, in a week that I can't really give you a concrete reasoning as to how the outside really helps the game, this is the one thing I can say that maybe there actually is some merit to this. The fact that they are doing this all out in the open. This isn't a situation where, like, Chelsie can go into another room and kind of, like, cool off, and then Cam can come back in. No, instead, Chelsie can go over to a side, call Cam an asshole, and then Cam can be like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And then they can continue to get into it while everybody else is witnessing it. That is fun to watch, and that does make this exciting, and it makes it a little bit harder to resist getting into those fights. If you're somebody that has an escalating conflict going on, chances are it is going to boil to the surface in this environment, and that is the one benefit of this twist being a thing. So this was, in a week, like I said, where there just wasn't a lot going on, this for a while was like the only thing to really talk about this week was this Cam and Chelsie confrontation. But what I like about this is that Cam does actually decide to talk to Chelsie about it. For a while, him and MJ were really unsure what to make of this, but he does decide to talk to her, and she kind of lets him in on the fact that she is just really uncomfortable with how he constantly is flirting towards women, and she is really bothered by it and doesn't like the fact that it's happening, and that he's kind of toying with all the women to get what he wants, and he makes it very clear that that is his intent. MJ is the only other person he feels close to but her, but he's always going to pick her in this situation. And again, I mean, I do think that this was a good conversation between them, but the problem is, and the show doesn't really show this, is what really is going on here. The reality is that Chelsie has had this crush on Cam for a while. The two of them, I guess, had a discussion where they kind of agreed to not really act on it until after the house, but I think that Chelsie sees it as eventually they're gonna be together after the season, where I think Cam kind of sees it as, we'll kind of just wait and see. Right now we're just friends, and we don't have to put labels on anything, and we can kind of just do whatever we want. And this is clearly given Chelsie a bit of discomfort. She doesn't like the fact that Cam is going towards other women and that he is, trying to, flirt with them and things like that. She doesn't really like that this is happening. The problem is, I don't think this is as productive of a conversation as they really could have had. I don't get the sense that after this conversation that this isn't going to be a problem anymore. Throughout the rest of the week, Cam is kind of moving away from MJ. He doesn't really know how to handle things with Chelsie, and I don't really know what to make of any of this. All I will say at this point is if Cam, Chelsie, and MJ are the final three of this game, that is going to be one of the most interesting final threes to watch, just because the amount of conflict going on within that three right now is just so unexpected, and it is the only thing that makes it seem like maybe Leah made the right decision. There's some tension going on here. This could potentially end up hurting them. And even Cam says at this point he isn't sure what to make of Chelsie as an ally. He wants to vote T-Core out, but he specifically wasn't going to do it because of her. And now he's feeling like her relationship to T-Core is much more detrimental than his relationship with Makensy. And I would agree with him on that, because him and Makensy, they're at least working with Chelsie. T-Core is in a completely separate trio with Kimo and Rubina, and that is definitely way more threatening. So again, there's a lot of factors here. I really don't know if they're going to be able to resolve this. I hope they do, but even though it does seem like they are at least on speaking terms by the end this week, I don't feel like this will be the end of this being an issue throughout the rest of this season. Now, that said, there actually is some positives to this situation, because if Chelsie, Cam, and MJ wanted to try to find a way to show that they are not this threatening trio that's always going to vote together, that's going to be in lockstep with each other, this is exactly the kind of situation that needed to happen. Now, this is not at all intentional. This for sure was not something that... Now, obviously, this is not intentional. They didn't fake a fight or anything like that. I mean, Cam is upset with Chelsie the rest of the night. They don't even have this conversation until after the veto ceremony. But I do think that it is one of those instances where if you're someone like Leah, who's looking at the more threatening trio, yeah, Kimo, Rubina, and T-Core feels so much more united compared to them, where there's all this dysfunction going on. So I do feel like this honestly comes at the perfect time, when we're getting down in numbers and people are thinking about how dangerous this trio is. I feel like this is the time this is kind of perfect for Chelsie to be like, yeah, well, you just saw what happened. You just saw how Cam reacted. You just saw how MJ was reacting. Clearly, we're not as close as everybody thinks we are, and I do think it is good in that sense. It's not great in the sense that this doesn't seem like something that's going to get fixed. This doesn't really seem like there's a lot of improvement within this situation. While it does seem like Cam, MJ, and Cam, MJ, and Makensy, Cam, MJ, and Chelsie are going to continue to work together, it doesn't really seem like this particular situation is going to get resolved anytime soon. So we then do get to the vote, but before we get to the votes, Julie does have them all participate in one last sing-along of the Janky song. And look, I called this. Like, literally, I was thinking this before the episode aired. There is no chance that Janky does not make them do a live sing-along or some kind of dance or something to embarrass themselves in front of everybody. And most of the time when you try to do stuff like this, it doesn't really work out. I think about the Wax Street Boys and Big Brother 17 when they tried to make them do that and the music didn't play in time and everyone's clapping was off and they didn't really seem like they wanted to do it. But this actually went fairly smoothly to where the audience was singing along, Julie was singing along. I actually thought it was kind of a fun moment. You could see how irritated the house guests were with this song, but I feel like if you wanted to cap off Janky Week with them constantly playing this song throughout all 3 episodes, I feel like this was the way to make that happen. So I thought this was honestly pretty funny. We do get to the pitches here, though, and T-Core, to her credit, like, despite the fact that I've not been a fan of how she's played this week, she does give a really good speech here saying that how grateful she is for the experience and the safe space for her to open up and express herself, and how she knows that no matter what happens, her journey isn't over yet. She also talks about how, like, she's happy that, she wants them to know that when she has their back, she protects them as much as she can. She wants them to do what's best for their game, and that against Rubina, it's a good decision either way. I thought that was a really good speech. And then Rubina also gives a pretty good speech saying that, like, she still has a lot to showcase, but she wants to represent Filipinos and also the small girls that doubt themselves. And again, I thought both of these speeches were really good. But then we do get to the votes, and in a season that's had a lot of interesting vote flips with different people voting in different ways, this is probably one of the more straightforward votes of the season. We get to the votes where the way this was set up also with them having to line up to this door and it taking forever was very awkwardly put together. This is another thing where it's like, maybe don't have them go to the balcony and make the balcony where they've been strategizing the same place as the diary room. Maybe there was another way to do this, but maybe even I don't know, have them in the house. Like, if they were in the house for the diary rooms, that would have made far more sense. But again, we got to create the illusion that they're in Janky World, so this is what they decided to do. But we do get to the votes, and like I said, in a season that's been, like, really unpredictable, this is, like, a way more straightforward vote. It ends up being 4-1 vote with T-Core being evicted, and it's a very sad eviction. Everyone's really sad as she leaves, but she does let them know that she loves all of them. Something to note, she does get to go into the house and briefly notices the comp that they're going to be partaking in. A lot of people were thinking that this was hinting at a battle back. I honestly didn't even notice it until somebody posted on Twitter, but that is something to take note of here. But we then get to T-Core's exit interview, and this was another one that I just really enjoyed. She talks about how she kind of had the sense that she was going home. She is a sociology major, and as a result, she's very good at reading people and having the intuition of just kind of knowing. So she kind of just had a feeling that that's what was going to happen. Again, why didn't you try to save yourself to prevent that? But that's a whole different story. She does talk about how she thinks she became such a big target after surviving the block due to how much people were, like, constantly praising her social game up and down, but also just to how good Rubina is at touching people's hearts. And I actually do agree with her on this. I think Rubina is someone where whenever she's on the block, she just has this ability to suddenly campaign and suddenly get people on her side and is able to just turn that on when she needs to. And I think against anybody, it's very impossible for her to leave, and that kind of makes me think that Rubina is gonna make a pretty deep run in this game. I do see her probably out of the trio lasting the longest just because she has this ability to find a way to get herself out of these tough situations. Not for the whole week, but once she's on the block and knows she's on the block, I mean, she kind of just, like, gets right into it, and I think that's something that T-Core took note of here. Julie does ask her what she would have done if she won the veto. She talks about how she would have saved Kimo, which I don't think anybody would have been surprised about, but was hoping she could rally the votes to save Rubina as well, which, again, if it was Rubina and Chelsie, I don't think she would have had to do much there, because Rubina absolutely stays in that scenario. Julie also talks to her about her HOH and her getting out Tucker, and she basically says that she knows everything happens for a reason, and Rubina and Kimo's games are gonna, we're gonna develop not having, and her and Rubina and Kimo's games were going to develop not having such a big target, and she just kind of felt like that was the direction she needed to go. So yeah, I thought overall it was a pretty good speech. We even get a few goodbye messages, which was really good. Chelsie talks about how much she didn't want to do this. Leah also talks about how hard it was to really put her up and how much she really loved her, and T-Core gets really emotional here, and honestly, I was starting to get a little emotional too when she talks about how she came into this game wanting to make friends, and she did. And I mean, I thought it was a really effective moment, her talking about just how much she generally loves all of these people. I thought it was a really great moment to see. So yeah, let's talk about T-Core, because look, I said this on Twitter. If you had told me, especially like 3 weeks ago, that T-Core was going to be one of the first members of the jury, I would have told you that's insane. Like, there's no scenario in which that actually happens. T-Core is making a deep run this game. It's probably going to be her or Chelsie winning in the end. There's really no other outcome. But now here we are with T-Core going out, and honestly, considering how this week ended up going, I end the week not really surprised that this is the outcome, just because of the way things played out. I mean, I said it last week, like, T-Core could be such an amazing player. She had so much potential. She has such great ability to connect with people and just be herself and open up about things. When she is, demonstrating this great social game, she's very good at that. She's very good at just connecting with people and being authentically herself, and people feel so good with her as a result. There's a reason she didn't go on the block until this week. It's because of the fact that so many people just absolutely loved her. But I really do think that she made a mistake in spending so much time with Kimo and Rubina. Obviously, yes, these are your friends and you want to work with them, but she never really tried to make any bonds outside them. Yes, she had Chelsie, but she didn't really try to work as much with the other side. Her and MJ didn't have much of a bond. Her and Cam had a bond, but not as close as maybe she needed it to. Just in general, I don't think T-Core did a very good job in trying to help herself and maintain her positioning. It feels like after the Cedric move and what she ended up doing there, and just how incredible that really was, that drive she had within her, she was so terrified of doing something like that again, because she was so worried about how she was going to be perceived. She was so worried about what it would do to her game. She didn't want to be that risky, and because of that, she just ended up being plagued by indecision. She constantly would say she wanted to do things. Take last week, for example. She talked about all this dirt she had on Quinn, that she was ready to tell Chelsie. She, made sure that she was the last person to do a one-on-one with Chelsie, and it seemed like she was going to just fully ignite this fire under her, and she was going to really just make Quinn so upset that he ever nominated Kimo and Rubina, and she just never did it. Going all the way back to week 4, when she's concerned about Leah and how Leah's been talking about Quinn and wants Quinn to know that Leah is someone that is actually targeting him and isn't on his side anymore. She doesn't end up doing it. Her and Rubina wanting to make a girls' alliance. This is something that they really could have done. Like, when they were talking about it during the round that Joseph left, it really did seem like this was effective. It really did seem like this was something that everybody wanted. And if they had just made it clear that they wanted to solidify this now, not tomorrow, not next week, they want to do it now, I do think we're having a different conversation. I do think that there was a very good possibility that alliance actually ends up being a thing, and that they actually do make a serious run in the game. But so again, there's all these things that she wanted to implement, all these things she wanted to do, and then just decided to not do them. And I think it really just ended up hurting her positioning as a result. But I also think that she just got a little too comfortable because of the fact that she was never on the block. she didn't really feel like she ever had to really fight for her spot. She didn't really feel like she had to put that effort in because she knew that she was going to be protected. And so now this week, when she suddenly had to campaign, she just didn't really seem to know what to do. Now, I will give her this. She did do a little bit more, which I'll talk about in the what we didn't see, but at least for a good majority of this week, I mean, she should have been having conversations with Leah. She should have been telling Leah that Chelsie and MJ and Cam considered her on the block last week. She absolutely was going to go on the block last week. Chelsie was worried about the fact that she won. Chelsie was telling them to go after Leah. Like, there's so much she could have done, and she just didn't do it. And I think that's really what ended up hurting her here. So that coupled with, culminating essentially in her just basically just throwing in the towel this week, I think that's really what ends up putting T-Core here. And it's a real shame because, again, I really do think that T-Core is just such a positive presence within this season. I loved how much she just wanted to be herself. I love the connection she made with others. I love seeing how excited she was when things would go her way. I mean, she was just such a fun presence to watch that it just made it so frustrating when she was playing the way that she was, because I really did want to root for her. I really did want things to turn around, but again, I just don't think she has that strategic bone within her body. I think that's really what hurts her, is that she knows how to play socially. I don't think she's a very good strategic player. I think we've seen that throughout this season, and I really just think that that is what ended up hurting her this season, is that she just didn't have that within her. And I think if she had that and she had a bit more drive and she was willing to achieve the things that she did, I don't think she goes anywhere near where she did. But unfortunately, that's not really the case. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at with T-Core. I never would have expected, especially with the trio, there was no way in hell I thought that she was going. I thought Kimo would absolutely be the first member of the trio to go, but here we are, T-Core's gone, and I don't really know what this means for Kimo and Rubina's games now. I really don't know what's going to happen. I think there's a possibility that they could end up making a deep run, but there's also a possibility that they could be the next two out at this point. I think Rubina's going to be fine, but Kimo's the one that I really don't know about. So yeah, T-Core's gone. It's really sad to think about because I really did enjoy her. I'm not really a fan of how she played this week, but overall, I think when we look back at her, we will look at her as one of the bright lights of this season. We will look at her as someone that had a lot of potential, someone who was very much robbed in the week that she went. I think we will absolutely be looking at T-Core in that conversation. There's so much more she has to give. I'd love to see her back at some point. I've heard people say that maybe when she's a little bit more older, she'd be willing to be a bit more cutthroat, and I absolutely would agree. I think that really is one of the things that does hold her back, is that she's this very introverted presence that just is so scared of making these big moves. But I think, again, give her some time. I think she could come back and really just make a serious run in this game, and I think could honestly really play so much better than she did here. But overall, I still really enjoyed watching her this season. It's just really disappointing to see the way she went out here. So yeah, definitely a big loss for sure. Definitely a really sad eviction, but certainly not a shocking one considering how this week ended up going. But I think the big thing to really talk about is in a season where we have gotten used to the idea of them having like 2 hours to, talk about the events of the vote and then go into the HOH. For the first time all season, they actually do the HOH comp on the episode. They don't finish it, but they at least start it. And I really liked what this comp ended up being. Basically, it's another candy type comp, but it's very similar to what we got in Reindeer Games, one of the last comps in Reindeer Games, where basically they have to try to stack this. Each one of them are in a different area, while Leah is in her HOH room for at least a little bit. I like that she had the HOH room for at least an hour. I thought that was kind of fun. But basically, Janky tells them about the comp and I guess Janky's gonna stick around for a bit. I thought Janky was gone after this week, but maybe he'll stick around. Maybe he'll be gone after this comp and Ainsley will come back. But for now, Janky's still here. Where basically they have to stack a bunch of candies, and whoever stacks enough, there's like 44 of them, they're gonna have to, whoever stacks enough, they're gonna hit their button to lock in their score, and they have only an hour to do this. And this was a really fun comp to watch. From what we did gather, of course, obviously, they have an entire hour to do this, but from what I gathered, Angela and MJ were like leagues ahead of everybody. Kimo also seemed like he was making some serious headway here. Not to make like a bold prediction, but MJ was wearing the same outfit that she did the two AI arenas that she ended up winning. So maybe that winning streak will continue. Angela also, I think, has a really good chance of winning this. She's very good at puzzles, as we saw in Wednesday's episode, so I think she definitely has a legitimate shot here. But again, it's really cool to get to talk about an HOH comp like on this video and not on the Sunday episode, which we're used to. And so yeah, we still don't know who won. There's a very good possibility that after I film this video, like they might actually reveal who won, or maybe we'll have to wait another fucking 9 hours, like fucking like I don't know, 13 hours again, like we did last time, and then the feeds will come back and they'll be long into the week. But either way, I like that we at least got to see the HOH comp here, and then we do get a few announcements on this episode, which I don't think were too surprising, but some announcements we do get for the week is that Sunday, Zingbot is going to be returning. I don't know why they're doing it Sunday and not Wednesday, especially the fact that Wednesday is a 90-minute episode preceded by a 90-minute episode of Survivor, which is insane that there's two 90-minute episodes of both shows on the same night. That's like craziness, but so 90-minute episode for Wednesday, and then Thursday, I've been heavily speculating this for a while. Other people have as well, but they are doing the double eviction on Thursday's episode. And yeah, so if you don't know, what I typically do is, because of the fact that it's going to be a double eviction, there's actually going to be two videos next week for Big Brother. I will be doing the Sunday and Wednesday episode in one video alongside the What We Didn't See, and then talking about the Thursday episode separately. And I think this is like the perfect time to do a double eviction. There's so many outcomes for where things can really go, which we'll of course talk about, but that is really how we do end things. But again, very excited to see how it goes. But that's really where we do leave things off on this episode. All right, so now that I've talked about everything that happened on the Thursday episode, let's get into the What We Didn't See, because honestly, there's quite a bit of stuff to talk about here. The thing that they really don't show in the episode that was pretty frustrating to me, even though I was happy we saw the HOH comp, I don't like that it was at the expense of them really just showcasing how crazy this vote ended up being, because this was a much messier day of votes, of potential votes, than I think the episode really did let on. The big thing to really talk about here is the Cam of it all. Cam was undoubtedly the swing vote of this week. MJ was very adamant on making sure that this was T-Core, making sure she had the votes to do it. And really just playing like a really solid game this week, taking advantage of the fact that Leah didn't put her up and trying to get in good with her and Angela, and really kind of being now a 3 for them. Leah and Angela really think they have MJ on their side, and they do, but also still is continuing to work with Chelsie and Cam and making sure that she's in a good spot there. Also working with Rubina and Kimo. I mean, look, MJ's a player that I've given a lot of flack towards throughout the season. I've not been a fan of how she's been playing this game. I feel like her reads have been really off. But now that she has the correct information, she's secured this middle position, and it really does feel like she's taking advantage of it. And honestly, if she continues to find a way to play both sides, I do think there is a scenario where MJ can win this game. And that's not something that I have been able to wrap my head around. I've always been saying, no, there's no chance. She's going to go to the end and she's going to lose unanimously. But I really do think that MJ has a chance of winning if she continues to play the way she does here. Now, there is a chance that, she finds herself in this position and immediately ends up ruining it, because that has been happening to MJ a lot this season. She finds herself in a good spot and then does everything in her power to ruin it. But I don't know if that's going to happen this time around. I feel like there were chances for her to do that. There is a moment where she tells Chelsie a little bit too much about how Leah is gunning for her and how Leah's someone that Chelsie, that Leah's gunning for her, and that, her and Angela both will likely put her on the block. I don't think she should have mentioned that, but I do think that she herself is in a really strong position right now, and I hope she's able to maintain that. And that's not something that I thought I would have been able to say not even 2 weeks ago, I think. I think, honestly, the fact that she's, positioned herself with Chelsie and Cam. She's also recognized she needs to put just as much emphasis into her relationship with Leah, and the fact that Leah didn't put her on the block this week, I think is really good for MJ moving forward, and I'm just really impressed by the way that she's been playing. But the real drama here comes with T-Core, who, like I said, throughout the most this week, she's not really doing much, she's not really campaigning. She does actually start to campaign. She has a conversation with Cam, and it's a really effective one because basically Cam ends up finding information from Leah that T-Core mentioned his name as a possibility for her to target. Now, this is basically a half-truth from Leah because while T-Core did say that she wanted Leah to target a big physical threat and get somebody out that might be dangerous, she didn't say Cam's name. Leah kind of just assumed that she meant Cam, and I think everybody assumed that she meant Cam, and this obviously sets alarm bells in Cam's head. Like, if he was contemplating whether or not to vote out T-Core, he's really thinking about voting out T-Core now, and it seems like he's pretty locked in at this point, and that's what's going to happen. But then he has a conversation with T-Core, and T-Core basically says, like, no, I didn't say that. I would never say anything bad about you. I want you and Chelsie and Rubina and Kimo. I want us all at the end game. I want that to be how this game ends up playing out. MJ can be there as well, but I want to make sure that Angela and Leah are gone, and I want to make sure that we're all at the end together. And this makes Cam a lot more confused because he just had this conversation with Chelsie where Chelsie was at first kind of conceding to the idea of, okay, if this is where everyone's going, then I'm just going to vote T-Core out. But then Chelsie, really starts to get into Cam's head and makes him think that maybe there was a possibility in keeping T-Core and making sure that she stays. And a lot of that hinges upon the idea that Leah is playing everybody, and Leah has all these people wrapped around her finger. So it's really not looking good for Leah. And again, just another big reason why Leah's royally fucked up with her nominations this week, why she really should have just put up Chelsie, because now Chelsie can drag Leah through the mud without really any consequences whatsoever. But eventually Cam does end up talking to Chelsie about this, really unsure what to do, but MJ kind of reels him back in. MJ kind of reminds him that this is what we need to do, even talking about the fact that, like, well, yes, Leah is dangerous, she wants to protect Leah, she doesn't want to, put Leah, she doesn't want to put Leah up on the block. I really do think MJ's recognizing that, like, Chelsie and Leah are two people who are always going to gun after each other. It's best to kind of just let them do that and sit back and kind of just play with both sides and then see which one ends up, successful, and then you can decide which path to go with. I think that is such a good way to play this game, and just another really good example of what MJ's doing. And I think Cam, for him, like, him voting out T-Core is absolutely the better move for him right now. He's expressed that he wants to go to the end with Chelsie and T-Core, where he absolutely loses. If he votes out T-Core, the game opens up so much more for him, and there's so many more paths that he can go on. But as long as T-Core is in the game, that's someone that Chelsie is always going to have on her side, and he does not really have as close a relation with T-Core. She also has put him on the block before, so he's really sketched out, and it really, again, just seems so up in the air. There was even a part last night where Cam talked to Chelsie and MJ about what he was going to do, and he didn't get to finish the conversation because Leah came into it. So yeah, it really was just so up in the air with where things were going to go. Ultimately, Chelsie did say to Rubina today that she was going to keep her, and it seemed like things were a bit more simplified. But again, I really just wish the episode hinted at the idea that maybe Cam was going to flip, maybe things were going to change, because for the the first time, I know they like to do this a lot in the edit, it actually would have been reflective of how the week was playing out overall, because it did really seem like maybe things were really going to be a lot more exciting here than they ultimately were. So yeah, that's really everything to talk about. Let's just get into, where things are headed in the next week. Again, very uncertain with how things are going to happen. Again, yet another week where I think there's a lot of possibilities. Now, I will say, for quite a majority of house guests, it does seem pretty obvious what they're going to do. If Chelsie wins, I mean, she's absolutely putting Leah up. She has been making it very adamant on just how much of a threat Leah is, and how they need to make sure that Leah's out of this house, and how Leah's trying to turn everybody against each other. Cam even expressed how annoyed he was that she was trying to tear friendships apart, and that she was trying to get in the way of that. So it really does seem like Leah is in a bad spot, when again, if she had just put up Chelsie, I don't think things quite go this way. I do think that maybe T-Core, Rubina, and Kimo would want her out, but T-Core even said when Rubina and Kimo went up that she wasn't exactly upset about Leah's nominations. They were more concerned about a renom than they were about her initial nominations, like all Leah, T-Core, and Rubina were. So again, it really just shows how bad of a position that Leah's in. She really needs Angela or MJ to win HOH here in order to make sure that she does not go on the block, because there's very few scenarios in which I don't think she ends up going, especially with a double looming. I really do think Leah goes next week. I really do see it happening. I just don't see many avenues for her right now. I mean, maybe if she finds a way to get Cam further away from Chelsie, that might be something she can do. I even thought for a good majority of this week that she was going to be successful with that. Like, her conversation with Cam really did seem like he was starting to veer away from Chelsie, and that he didn't really know how to feel. But then Chelsie reeled him back in, because that's what Chelsie does so well. Chelsea's able to push her own agenda and make it seem like it's your agenda and that it's beneficial for you. And I feel like if Chelsie is able to get her way, which she didn't this week, but she might be able to do it again, then I do think that Chelsie is going to be able to, just get Cam away from Leah and make sure that Leah does not get that much further in this game. Certainly, I don't think she has nearly as good of a chance to win as she did. Yes, she got T-Core out, and it is a good move, but T-Core was going for Angela over Leah, and by the end of the week was going for Leah over Angela. So again, I think that kind of just sums up how bad of a move this was for her. When it comes to Kimo winning, I honestly have no idea what he would do. Legitimately don't. He could put up Angela, but Angela just saved him. He could put up Leah, but Leah was instrumental in making sure that he was saved. But she also targeted his trio, so he could get revenge for T-Core in that way. Or he could go in a completely different direction and decide to go for Chelsie or MJ or, one of them. So I really don't know what would happen if Kimo won. Cam, very straightforward, I think. Leah and Angela on the block. I don't think there's any question about that whatsoever. But then if Angela wins, that's where things get exciting here. And that's kind of why I want to see it happen, because Angela did say to Leah that she would put Chelsie on the block. She wants to make sure she has that move. And I really hope, if that is the case, that she just goes for it. I don't want her to do what Leah did this week and talk herself out of it. I really just want Angela to stick to her guns and make it happen, because just imagine the fireworks that would start if that actually happened. If Chelsie, made sure that Angela was saved, and then Angela ends up putting her up, and then who knows who she puts next to her. I mean, I think that would be really exciting. I think either way, this is going to be a really good double eviction. This cast is no stranger to playing the game that way. Every AI arena after Cedric left basically felt like a double eviction anyway, so I really do feel like this is going to be one of the more exciting ones we've had. I don't see this being like last year, where it's just Leah and Angela going back to back. It could be. It really could be. I hope that's not the case, but there is a scenario where that happens. But I think the reason I feel a bit more hopeful is because Angela's just won 3 comps, and Leah's basically won 3 comps. So I think things are a little bit less clear than maybe we're thinking. As far as Chelsie goes, I mean, look, am I saying that Chelsie is going to go next week? No. I mean, this is Chelsie. She's still the best player of this game. She nearly swayed Cam into keeping T-Core. It seemed like she was going to get her way, and then ultimately I think she just decided that, like, this isn't worth the fight. The votes aren't there. There's not really much I can do, and just ultimately decided to vote out T-Core. But that doesn't mean that Chelsie isn't going to make sure that other things get done. She wants Leah out of this house. She wants to make sure that she is in this dominant position. And so I'm not going to at all suggest that Chelsie ends up leaving. I do think if she leaves, it will be in the double eviction. Like, if she does, like, let's say she wins HOH this week, I do think she leaves in the double eviction. Now, if she wins HOH, then it probably is just Leah going if she's not gone and if she doesn't win veto. But you know, we'll really just have to see how things end up going. Either way, I'm just really excited to see how this week plays out. And the fact that I can still say I'm excited for this week at Final 8, at Final 7, just really is a testament to how good this season has been. And also the fact that they're not going to be outside. They're going to be inside. They're going to be able to strategize more. We're going to have a lot more to talk about. So yeah, overall, I'm just really interested to see how the next week plays out, how the rest of this game ends up going. I think there's a lot more potential moving forward. And I also think that things aren't nearly as clear-cut as they maybe seemed a couple weeks ago. I still think Chelsie is the frontrunner to win this game, but with how MJ has been playing this week, I do think that she has a legitimate chance of winning. I really do think it. Even Angela, I don't think we should count her out at this point. I mean, she's now won 3 comps. She has, for the first time all season, like, voted correctly and made sure that T-Core ended up going. Basically is the reason that Leah decided to put T-Core on the block. A lot of that was due to Angela. And then if she gets Chelsie out, I mean, again, don't count Angela out at all. Cam does very much have a chance, but I think Cam really needs to try to play his own game and really try to get in with Leah, get in with, you know, Kimo and Rubina. I think he needs to do that because right now, I feel like if Cam sits next to anybody in the end, I do think it comes down to, like, if he doesn't get out Chelsie, I do think it's one of those scenarios where, because Cam really hasn't done much from a comp perspective and doesn't really have a lot of moves to his name, I don't really know if Cam has as good of a chance of winning the game. I do think he very well could. I mean, he's such a fun player. I love, like, the songs and the dances that he does and just how lively he is. I love the energy he brings to the game. But I just don't know if he is as clear of a front runner, as clear of a winner as others do think he is. I do think things are a bit more open. Even Kimo and Rubina, I think, have a chance. I mean, look at Kimo's speech 2 weeks ago. Like, that tells you he can win the game. And then Rubina, when she is in survival mode, she is legitimately effective at what she does. So overall, I think it's just a really well-rounded Final 7. I think it really could end up going any way. And I'm just really interested to see how things do end up playing out. But overall, I think that's really it for my thoughts on this week. Again, not the most exciting week to talk about. Did have a little bit more exciting of an outcome as the end of the week approached, but still didn't really feel, a lot of the week just didn't really feel like Big Brother, didn't really feel like there was much going on. I spent a considerable amount of times watching feeds this week. A lot of it was because Leah was HOH, and I really was just hoping that I was just fucking delusional, and that I was really hoping that she was just playing everybody and that things would really turn around, and that didn't really end up happening. But either way, you know, what can you really do at this point? It was still, I guess, an interesting week to watch. You know, seeing Janky and all that stuff, wasn't really a big fan of all of that. But I don't think it's going to impact the game. I don't think this is going to have... I guess the only thing I will end this video on is that I don't see this twist impacting the game in the way other seasons have. Yes, a lot of the time in a modern season of Big Brother, when things are really exciting, there's a twist that comes around and it ends up ruining the entire course of the game. But let's look at some of those twists in comparison to this one. You have, like, the hacker in Big Brother 20. That last 2 weeks, there's a chance to get Tyler out. Tyler doesn't end up going, and, you know, Faute goes. And then the second week, again, same kind of thing. Rockstar ends up going there. And that kind of just made this level 6 steamroll happen, and it made the game so less interesting to watch. Then you look at last season where, yes, you had Zombie Week, but that was a week where there was nothing going on except 2 people coming back into the house for the entire week. They were just there. There wasn't a game being played for everybody else, and it just made things so less interesting knowing that somebody now came back. And then you had the jag of it all, of him winning being able to play in the HOH twice, and that just ruining everything. Compared to this, which still, again, involved a regular week of Big Brother where somebody ended up leaving, and aside from the fact that they were outside, there wasn't that much of, and there were 2 vetoes, there wasn't much of a change to the game. I just don't think this is going to have an impact in the way those other twisted. I still think that this is still a really exciting group of game players. There's still a lot of interesting outcomes that can go on. There's a few things that went on this week that I think are going to have a pretty big impact moving into the next week. So I do still think that we're in for a really exciting endgame. I don't think this is going to be one of those endgames that, steers, halts to, has a, kind of ends up coming to like a screeching halt. I don't think that's what's going to happen here. At least I hope so. I'm still very hopeful that the rest of the season is still going to be very exciting, and that this was just not the most eventful week to really talk about. Even on a week where there wasn't much going on, we still had the Chelsie and Cam drama. We still had a really interesting potential vote flip. Like, there still were things to talk about. I just think compared to other weeks, like, yeah, it just wasn't really the same. But especially, again, with just how low energy and how bad the morale was and everything, I really do think you got to chalk it up to that. I saw some people say that they think that the twist is not the reason why things were so boring this week, but I would say that the end of this week and how much more exciting things were really do end up negating that. So yeah, overall, I think that's really all I have to say about this week. Let me know what you guys thought. We'll love to hear your thoughts on all of that. And of course, if you like this video, I very much do recommend checking out my channel. I have a ton of reviews of other Big Brother seasons. I'm going to be covering Survivor. I also do movie and TV reviews. And if you're into any of that, definitely try to, check out my channel. Consider subscribing as well. Always, definitely, would love to keep you up to date with all that stuff. But that's really it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys saw this week overall. Left your thoughts on all of that. And I will see you guys later. Okay, bye.
Ice cream dancing, so much fun.